Welcome everyone to English class. Okay, we are going to start 10th English. The first unit is Glimpses of Green. In the first unit we have 3 lessons. The first one is Adventures in the Banyan Tree, written by Ruskin Bond. It's a short story. The second one is The Snake and the Mirror, written by Vaikam Muhammad Bashir, another short story. And last one is a poem, Lines Written in Early Spring. It is written by William Wordsworth. Now let us start with the first lesson, Adventures in a Banyan Tree. Nature is for all living beings. You know that. It is not only for a single thing. Everyone depends on nature. Nobody can live without nature. Man should live in harmony with nature. But what we do? We actually bring disharmony to everything nature. So man is only an exception in that case. It is a very sad thing to refer to it like that. Being one with nature is always mesmerizing. It is very much interesting, wonderful, and attractive. Have you ever got a chance to spend your leisure time with nature? Of course, you might have. And you have to think about that. Just think about a moment in which you spent your leisure time with nature. That mesmerizing experience. Think about that. Okay, now let's read how a boy experienced and blended with the essence of nature. So it is the story of a boy's harmonious life with nature. So let us enter into the lesson, Adventures in the Banyan Tree, written by Ruskin Bond, an Indian English writer. But he is of British descent. Okay, before listening to this lesson, you please take your notebook also with you. And if you have the textbook, it would be very nice to keep that open in front of you. It will be more helpful to you. So I am going to the first paragraph of this lesson. Though the house and grounds of our home in India were grandfather's domain, the magnificent old banyan tree was mine chiefly because grandfather, at the age of 65, could no longer climb it. Grandmother used to tease him about this, and would speak of a certain Countess of Desmond, an English woman who lived to the age of 117, and would have lived longer if she hadn't fallen while climbing an apple tree. The spreading branches of the banyan tree, which curved to the ground and took root again, forming a maze of arches, gave me endless pleasure. The tree was older than the house, older than grandfather, as old as the town of Dera, nestling in a valley at the foot of the Himalayas. Okay, that is the first paragraph. Now let us go to the meaning of the paragraph. Yes, here the boy is a speaker. He speaks about his experience in the house of his grandfather and grandmother. He recollects that the grounds of his home and house in India were under grandfather's domain. It was under the control of grandfather, or he was owned by that area. Even though it was so, the magnificent old banyan tree, there was a banyan tree which was magnificent, very great. The boy says that that magnificent old banyan tree was his. And he says the reason. What's the reason? Because grandfather at the age of 65, yes, his grandfather was at the age of 65 then, and he could no longer climb it. He could not climb the magnificent old banyan tree at the age of 65. So, the little boy, could climb the banyan tree. So, normally it became his domain. It became his area mainly. That's the reason. But what about the grandmother? Grandmother used to tease him about this. Grandmother is a bit humorous, and there is such a chemistry between grandmother and grandfather. Grandmother teased or made fun of him about his inability to climb up the tree even at the age of 65. Grandmother says that even a Countess of Desmond, she would refer to a Countess of Desmond, an English woman who lived to the age of 117. That Countess lived to the age of 117, and even at that age, she could climb trees. And once when she tried to climb the tree at the age of 117, she fell down and died. And if she had not tried to climb up the tree at the age of 117, she would have lived longer. Saying like this, grandmother would always tease the grandfather. And when she fell down and died, she was trying to climb up an apple tree. There was an apple tree. Yes. The spreading branches of the banyan tree, which curved to the ground and it took root again, forming a maze of arches, gave me endless pleasure. The boy says that the banyan tree and the surrounding gave him very much pleasure, and mainly there is one thing which gave him endless pleasure. What is that? So many branches of the banyan tree curved to the ground, bent down to the ground, and it took root again. And so there formed a maze of arches. Maze of arches here means narrow ways. So many narrow ways were formed, looking like arches. And the boy enjoyed playing around that area, going through the narrow passages formed by this curved branches of banyan tree. And he says that is why he says that that gave him endless pleasure. Okay, you also would like to play like that because you are children. You like to be in the company of nature. Yes, the tree was older than the house. Okay, now the boy speaks about the age of that tree. It was even older than the house, then older than grandfather, and then he says that it was even older than the town of Dehra, or as old as the town. Sorry, it is not older than the town of Dehra, but it is as old as the town of Dehra. Okay. The tree is nestling in a valley at the foot of the Himalayas. Nestling here means it is settling. It has settled down in the valley of Himalaya. this banyan tree is settled at the foot of the Himalayas, or it may be at the valley of the Himalaya mountain. So this is the meaning of the first paragraph. So what idea we get from the first paragraph? In the first paragraph, we get the idea that the speaker of this story is a boy, and he is spending his time with his grandmother and grandfather, and he is very happy to have the magnificent banyan tree his own. He got that so because grandfather was not able to climb up the tree at the age of 65, and then grandmother would always tease him or make fun of him by referring to a Countess of Desmond, an English woman who lived to the age of 117, and at that age she was even able to climb up trees, and one day when she climbed up a tree, apple tree, she fell down and died. In this manner, she would tease the grandfather. And the branches of the banyan tree formed so many narrow passages, and the boy liked to go through that way, and he enjoyed playing around that area. And then we get the idea that the tree is very old. It is even older than grandfather. It is even older than the house situated there, and perhaps it is as old as the town of Dehra. And we also understand that the banyan tree is situated at the foot of the Himalayan mountain. So now let us move to the second paragraph. My first friend and familiar was a small grey squirrel. Arching his back and sniffing into the air, he seemed at first to resent my invasion of his privacy. But when he found that I did not arm myself with a catapult or air gun, he became friendlier. And when I started leaving him pieces of cake and biscuit, he grew bolder and finally became familiar enough to take food from my hands. Okay, let us look the meaning. My first friend and familiar. Now the boy is speaking about his first friend and familiar, and he says that there was a small grey squirrel. The first animal friend of the boy was a small grey squirrel. Arching his back and sniffing into the air, he seemed at first to resent my invasion. At first, the grey squirrel did not like him. He showed his anger towards him. He expressed that anger or resentment. Why? Because he thought the boy was actually destroying his privacy. And the squirrel, at that time when he found it first time, the squirrel was arching its back. You know what is arching? And sniffing into the air. In that way, he expressed his resentment. He expressed his anger, dislike towards the boy. At that time, he thought that the boy was trying to destroy his privacy. But when he found that I did not arm myself, but next time, the animal, squirrel, found that the boy was harmless. There was no arm. He was not armed with any kind of weapon like a catapult or air gun. He became friendlier. This made him show his friendliness to the boy. And when I started leaving him pieces of cake and biscuit, he grew bolder and finally became familiar enough to take food from my hands. Okay, when the animal became friendlier, the boy wanted to make him more and more friendlier. That is why he began to give him pieces of cake and biscuit. And this made the squirrel grew bolder and bolder. It became more courageous, and finally became familiar enough to take food from our hands, and it showed its familiarity more boldly and began to take food from the hands of the boy itself. Next paragraph. Before long, he was delving into my pockets and helping himself to whatever he could find. He was a very young squirrel, and his friends and relatives probably thought him headstrong and foolish for trusting human. Yes. Before long, he was delving. Delving here means he began to search thoroughly. He began to search thoroughly in the pockets of the boy. Why? Because this time he became very much closer. He became very much friendlier, and now he does not have any kind of fear towards the boy, feeling that the boy is harmless, and helping himself to whatever he could find, and he began to check the pockets of the boy thoroughly, and began to find out what is there in the pocket of him. He was a very young squirrel. Okay, he was very young, and his friends and relatives probably thought, the friends and relatives of that young squirrel, the other squirrels who are his friends and relatives, thought him headstrong. They began to think about, perhaps they might have thought about the squirrel like this, like what, that squirrel is a headstrong and a foolish one. Why? Because only such a headstrong and foolish animal can trust human beings. Why? Because they don't have any positive attitude towards human beings, the animals. Why? Because in many ways we human beings do many harm to animals. But here the young squirrel has given his trust. The young squirrel has started to live or started to show his confidence towards a human being. That is why they thought that he will learn a lesson. Why? Because now he is with the human being, and only why he do like that? Because he is stubborn, obstinate. His obstinacy or stubborn nature make him keep such a friendship with the human beings, and it is a foolish decision. Why? Because no human beings can be considered as a trustworthy being for animals. Yes, next paragraph. In the spring, when the banyan tree was full of small red figs, birds of all kinds would flock into its branches. The red-bottomed bulbul, cheerful and greedy, gossiping rosy pastors and parrots and crows, squabbling with each other all the time. During the fig season, the banyan tree was the noisiest place on the road. Okay, now the spring season came. When it was spring, the banyan tree was filled with a lot of small red figs, red colored figs were there. And then what happened? Birds of every kinds, birds of all kinds would flock into its branches. They would fly into the branches of the tree. You know why? Because they want to eat the beautiful small red figs. And the birds flocked into the branches of the tree include red-bottomed bulbul, cheerful and greedy, then gossiping rosy pastors. Rosy pastors came to the branches gossiping. That means they were making sounds, and the writer here says that they were actually gossiping about somebody like that. And parrots and crows. Parrots and crows also were there among the birds flocked into the branches of the tree. And all these birds were squabbling with each other. They were actually quarreling with each other all the time. So what happened during the fig season? The banyan tree was the noisiest place on the road. So if you are asked what made the banyan tree noisiest place on the rod during spring season, I think you can answer that. It is because of the presence of so many birds in the branches. So many variety of birds came to the branches. Why variety of birds came into the branches? They came to eat small red figs of the banyan tree. So the first, let me stop here, the first part of this class, and in the next class we will move to the next paragraph or next part of the lesson. Thank you.